While some suppliers state their websites can only be used by people aged 18 or over, there appear to be few, if any, barriers to younger people making purchases. There's also an extensive array of online sellers, some UK-based, who prepare mixtures of hormones themselves, often for injection in a process known as home brewing. If you don't want this to happen, you need to expand the care, not limit it. This is a symptom of a limited amount of resources. This is a symptom of a limited amount of care. It's the same way with abortion. Making abortion illegal doesn't stop abortions from happening, it just stops safe abortions from happening. Because people will get their necessary medical care one way or another. The ideal would be that you have it legal and regulated so that you can make sure it's as safe as possible for people. But if you limit people's access to legal and regulated channels, they will go to third-party channels that might not be as safe. If safety is your concern, banning the care is the wrong way to do it. Banning the care only makes the problem worse. We know this about abortion. It's the same So because it's journalism's God-given American right and duty to endanger the lives of as many trans people as possible, The Guardian recently put out an article about trans people again, and fear-mongering, this time about DIY HRT. So this is from Friday the 3rd May, something like that. Anyway, concerns over cross-sex hormones available online for just £11 a month. Or is that euros? Pounds? I don't remember. It's all fake anyway. Experts fear children questioning their gender may turn to hidden economy to obtain hormones illegally. Is it illegal even, though? Like, are there laws against it? I'm pretty sure in many instances, not all. Of course, check your area. Testosterone's a different story, but buying estrogen or, like, androgen blockers, pretty sure that's not illegal. But like I say, check your area. So, like, this is not the first time that this has come up, obviously, on the channel. It's also probably not the first time it's come up on an article, like a mainstream media article. But there's a lot of interesting stuff about this one, and I thought we would go over it because, could be fun. So I guess it's from the UK, bruv. All good, no user data. Cross-sex hormones designed to masculinize or feminize a person's body are available to buy online for less than £11 a month, with experts warning that growing numbers of under-18s may turn to the medicine's hidden economy. Last month, the landmark Cass review of children's gender treatment in England concluded there was a lack of reliable evidence supporting the use of cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers by young people questioning their gender identity. It's not actually true, by the way. A lot of what was in the Cass review has actually been walked back by Hilary Cass, I believe is her name, the author of it herself. Their methodology for determining there was not enough evidence was by putting up literally impossible standards for legitimacy for these studies that do exist that are in favor of these standards of care for trans people and trans youth. Those being they weren't double-blind studies, even though you can't really do that because the whole point of a double-blind study is that the doctor and the patients are not aware of a variety of things. In this case, you would have one patient, be taking hormones and another one not, and then you would have the doctor who wouldn't know which one was which, and then they would make a variety of examinations and see how that person changed and how the person who got the hormones and who didn't might have reacted differently. If there's any placebo type shit going on, it also removes bias from the doctor because they don't know who it is, etc., etc., etc. You can do that with ibuprofen, for instance, but you can't really do that for hormones because if you give a person hormones, there will be actual physical changes that will happen that'll be visible to not only the patient but also the doctor and also the people around the patient as well. So if it was two people on testosterone whose bodies aren't by default producing testosterone, well, then the person who got the testosterone, their vocal cords would thicken. They would end up having a deeper voice because of this. They might also have more body hair growing, etc., etc. When it comes to people taking estrogen, when they aren't, producing it by default, there might be breast development, there's going to be fat distribution changes, all this kind of stuff that would make it difficult for the study to be double-blind because you would end up knowing which person got the fucking treatment and which one didn't. So it's literally not possible. It's an absurd standard to hold, and that's the loophole, for lack of a better term, they used to discredit a variety of studies that are pro the standards of care when it comes to trans youth. So it's a completely bunk review, but it's obviously the damage has already been done, and it's going to continue to be cited even though it's trash. As a result, provision of cross-sex hormones to under 18s is under review. The report said that while they can still be made available to patients from the age of 16, they should only be prescribed with extreme caution and a strong clinical rationale for not waiting until an individual reaches 18. And that's not even to include the fact that a lot of the people that don't want it for under 18s also don't want it for under 25s and also don't want it for anybody. But for right now, they've moved the needle to, under 18s. The recommendations apply to the NHS and the private sector. While trans adults are often prescribed such hormones, it is illegal to supply the drugs in the UK to adults or under 18s without a prescription. This is not even to say it's easy for trans adults to get them. You could see the video that Philosophy Tube dropped where she talked about how she had to email her doctor like hundreds of times in order to like get any kind of response at all when it came to trying to get hormones, trying to get gender affirming care, and it took forever to happen. And there's a whole story about it. And that's also the experience of a lot of people in the UK. Because the entire point of the cast review and of the so-called questions around trans care, even though there's a variety of studies that support the standards of care currently, the whole point of it is to limit it as much as possible without outright banning it, because it's harder to sell an outright ban, especially because a lot of these medicines might be given to cisgender people, and there's no reason to not give them to trans people, and that can often make those kinds of laws not really hold any water and end up getting taken down. There's a variety of reasons why straight-up bans are harder to do. They're not as popular with the populace as well. It's easier to pretend you care about people's safety while limiting it so much. The entire point is to limit the ability for trans people to access this care because they don't want trans people to access this care because they don't want trans people to exist happily and healthily. That's it. Very simple. There's a lot of ways people try to weasel around that, and there might be some people pushing this shit that aren't aware that that is the strategy of the people who are in positions of power pushing it. It is what it is. That is the strategy. It's the same, by the way, with when it comes to abortion in America. In a lot of places, for Republicans who want to ban abortion because they want to control the bodies of women and people with the capacity for pregnancy, they often cannot outright ban them. Now, obviously, the overturn of Roe v. Wade does make it easier, but before that, they would just, instead of like outright banning abortion, which they couldn't really do, they would instead pass laws that made absurd regulations that abortion clinics had to follow, like having a certain level of ceiling height. Like, you might think I'm joking, I'm actually not. Having a certain height ceiling in the facility, and if they don't have that, then they can't perform abortions or any services related to it. A lot of really stupid bullshit like that, which is essentially just red tape to make abortion not possible to be done. And even if they do comply with those regulations in order to be able to do it, it's going to be such a difficult situation for the people providing the healthcare that it's almost not worth it. And not even to mention the legal challenges that you might face because of that, which for a lot of these clinics might not have a lot of money in the cachet for fighting those legal battles. So it's just another method of stopping what they don't want to happen from happening using, essentially lawfare, legal warfare. If you didn't have to wait like 5 years to see a provider, there might actually be time for caution as it is. There are so few resources. By the time a kid even gets to a doctor, they're desperate. Yeah, like it is a non-issue that they're making into an issue because it's convenient to their narrative. Anyway. Guardian research found online pharmacies in places ranging from India to Hong Kong and Portugal offering hormone treatments without a prescription, typically ranging from £10 to £30 for 28 days supply of a starting dose of feminizing hormones. This is legal, by the way. I'm pretty sure in most places this is legal. You are allowed to do this. Testosterone is a different issue just because of how the hormones act. Testosterone is a lot less stable, and you have to be a lot more careful with it. Estrogen is not that way. 5 years was the time scale I was given for waiting, 18 months so far. Yeah, like it's not like people are getting rushed into care. And even if you had concerns about people getting rushed into care, the way you deal with that is not by limiting people's access to care, but by expanding it, like educating more doctors, having more specialists involved so that people can be seen by doctors quicker, so that they can actually get adequate health care and recommendations quicker and have actual educated doctors on the issue who can help them with it, rather than, in some cases, there not being enough doctors to handle the amount of clientele, so people are just like, yeah, here's the hormones, but yada, yada, yada. We can't do anything more extensive than that because we literally don't have the resources. The way to deal with that in many instances is expanding the resources, not limiting it. But they want to limit it because they don't want people to be able to get it. While some suppliers state their websites can only be used by people aged 18 or over, there appear to be few, if any, barriers to younger people making purchases. There's also an extensive array of online sellers, some UK-based, who prepare mixtures of hormones themselves, often for injection in a process known as home brewing. If you don't want this to happen, by the way, it is very few and far between. You're not going to find very many people that do this. But if you don't want this to happen, you need to expand the care, not limit it. This is a symptom of a limited amount of resources. This is a symptom of a limited amount of care. It's the same way with abortion. Making abortion illegal doesn't stop abortions from happening, it just stops safe abortions from happening. Because people will get their necessary medical care one way or another. The ideal would be that you have it legal and regulated so that you can make sure it's as safe as possible for people. But if you limit people's access to legal and regulated channels, they will go to third-party channels that might not be as safe. If safety is your concern, banning the care is the wrong way to do it. Banning the care only makes the problem worse. We know this about abortion. It's the same shit. And the only way that that analogy is any way inaccurate is that back alley abortions are far more dangerous than buying hormones from online pharmacies, i.e. regulated sources, or from getting them from not regulated sources or homebrew shit. Like, it is still going to be safer to do that than to get an abortion where you couldn't through the proper channels. Because of, like, back alley abortions, coat hanger type shit has led to infertility, death, etc., of the person who's pregnant. It is quite literally better for people's safety and for the continued propagation of children being made to allow for safe, easy to access, regulated abortion. Because otherwise you end up potentially having people become infertile, etc., or even dying. So, like, we'll stop here for a quick second. For those of you who don't know, DIY HRT is not people literally, like, with a cauldron putting in fucking eye of newt and frog legs and wyvern feathers together in a fucking stew into a potion to make the hormones. That's not what that shit is. Usually DIY just means that you are DIYing your regiment without a prescription, getting these hormones often through regulated channels like online pharmacies. And then the DIY part of it is not the manufacture of the drugs, but rather the dosing. And for that, you usually just look to the standards of care on the issue and then go to places where you can get your blood tested. You can go to the doctor and get a blood test, and they can check your levels that way. That's the DIY part, not the manufacture of the drug. And, like, if you wanted that process to be safer, then make it easier for people to access the hormones through their fucking doctors, not limit it. We know what the hormones do. According to the Bunk cast review, around 500 people were on these, blah, 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 blah. Concerns have been raised about the ease of availability of DIY hormones online and whether young people might increasingly turn to the hidden economy, including drug dealers, to obtain the hormones illegally. If you don't want this, increase access to the safe and, in this case, legal channels, even though buying estrogen online is in most cases not legal. Check your area, check your local laws. Dr. Alison Cave, the Chief Safety Officer at the UK's Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, said, "Patient safety is our top priority, and we strongly advise that people do not self-prescribe or try to obtain medicines from an unregulated source. There's a way to fix this that isn't banning at all. A prescription-only medicine may only be sold or supplied lawfully in accordance with the prescription issued by an appropriate healthcare practitioner. It is also illegal to sell or supply unauthorized medicines. The HRA had not authorized any medicines for the treatment of gender dysphoria," she added. That said, the estradiol Valirit isn't only for the treatment of gender dysphoria. Women going through menopause, whose bodies are not producing estrogen at adequate levels for what they want or for their health, will often supplement that lost estrogen due to usually aging by injecting or taking pills or whatever estradiol, right? Estrogen. Like, the MHRA probably does authorize medicines for the treatment of menopausal women when it comes to estrogen, right? And in that way, it is legal for them to sell. So you're going to have to make it illegal for menopausal women to get that shit if you want to make it illegal for trans people to get it that way. Dr. Aidan Kelly, a clinical psychologist who left GIDS in 2021 and has since set up a private service, said he worried that people in desperation will access care in unsafe ways, make it easier to access the safe care then. Like, it's the easiest answer I have for you. Vulnerable children and young adults must be told the truth about puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones. Their evidence base is very weak, and there are known risks. Source, crack pipe. If you're sourcing the CAS review, which is the only source that's been brought up yet on this issue, the studies that were pro the current standards of care for trans healthcare were all denied for, like, impossible medical standards for a fucking double-blind study, dude. It's literally not possible. I've already explained this. Maria, which was a name that was changed, whose teenage daughter bought testosterone online and later found a drug dealer, said hormones should not be given without a prescription. Quote, that doesn't mean that... So this is really funny. Now that I've read it before reading it all, like, I didn't read this article before reading it, but I skimmed forward before I started reading. So her daughter bought testosterone online and later from a drug dealer, said hormones should not be given without a prescription. So then Maria goes on to say, that doesn't mean that therefore the NHS route should be made easier. Then you don't actually care about safety. You don't actually care about this issue. You just don't want trans people to access the care. That's it. That doesn't mean the NHS route should be made easier. Well, for one, it should be made safer. And for two, you know, if you don't make it so that there are enough resources for people to access it, if they can't access the fucking care, they're going to get it elsewhere. Like, we're not saying all safeguarding should be kicked to one side. Nobody is arguing that. We're arguing, like, pro-trans advocates are saying that it should be made easier to access them from safe channels like a fucking doctor. Maria added that her daughter had since detransitioned. This is an insane minority of trans people out there. The majority of trans people do not detransition, and the majority of detransitioners do not detransition because they're not actually trans. They often do so because of social pushback and repercussion from bigots They often do so because of lack of financial access to be able to afford it. They often do so because of lack of health insurance and healthcare access to it, not because they're not trans anymore. If given the opportunity, they would go back on the hormones. Anyway, we're almost done with this garbage. The Trans Safety Network said that since the sharp reduction in referrals to hormone experts for young people from 2020 onwards, there have been several inquests into suicides by young trans people, including judgments finding that a lack of access to healthcare was an aggravating factor. Yeah, imagine my shark, dude. Imagine my shock that people who can't access necessary medical care end up taking their own life because shit fucking sucks. Not even to mention the fact that trans people are like a fucking chess piece for bigots in order to get power and money from dumbasses that don't know any better, who just hate trans people because they're bigoted. The near removal of these pathways will lead young people being exposed to risk and taking measures into their own hands, the spokesperson said. The group also raised concerns about cracking down on the DIY market for hormone therapy, saying it exists because of failures to provide safe, timely, and monitored support access to treatment. Yeah, imagine this is at the end of the fucking article, where before that we get the mother of a daughter who allegedly bought this testosterone online. Like, I feel like you put this in the front of the article, not the end of it. Quote, any attempt to ban online distributors will further push young people away from the commonly used gray market online pharmacies, which legitimately manufactured medications via countries where these medications are available over the counter to less established sources with unknown additional risks. Yeah, no shit. But like, this is at the end of the article because it's inconvenient to the narrative. The Department of Health said the MHRA monitors online channels and, where possible, works with partners to disrupt the illegal trade in human medicines. Quote, we are looking closely at what can be done to curtail any loopholes, including legislative, a spokesperson said. Wow. Thank God, we're really doing the Lord's work. Like, it's some bullshit, and it always has been, and it should be plain as day, but unfortunately people are not educated enough on the issue because of all the misinformation being spread around like dipshits that write Guardian articles. We don't talk about that shark, Radham. That's not my shark. That was someone else's, okay? Anyway, so this person tweeted, The Guardian, after enthusiastically cheering on the removal of every legal means of accessing transgender healthcare, are suddenly, quote, concerned that desperate trans people might take matters into their own hands. Fuck you, you did this. Like, unironically, yes. Now, this was what was interesting for me. This is from Eli Ehrlich, and Eli got popular like some years ago because she was actually propositioned by the Matt Walsh team before that dumbass documentary that he dropped, What is a Woman, or whatever it was called, where they were like, oh yeah, we're pro-trans people, and we're just interviewing people for a pro-trans thing. Meanwhile, the actual thing they were interviewing for was What is a Woman, the anti-trans documentary that was complete garbage and had no actual factual information in it, which was just pushing a narrative, and they weaponized people who actually did do the interviews and misrepresented them throughout it. So Eli was able to catch that, was able to spread information about that. It ended up being the case that not a lot of people that might have otherwise done the interviews did, and they had a lot less material to work with. And now, apparently, this might be the case for the Guardian article as well. You'll notice that nobody who actually gets their hormones through online pharmacies, whatever, were actually interviewed in this article, where you'd probably want to do that. If you were a journalistic outlet, you would want to be like, oh, people are doing X? Well, how about we interview someone who's doing X? They didn't get anybody. Turns out, got some more information. Not entirely sure like how much this would have done, because I didn't see this alert, but could have done something. The Guardian DIY HRT hit piece finally came out, and there's something inspirational about it. It's not the article itself, but that our community came together over the past month to warn one another not to speak with them, and they couldn't find a single interviewee doing DIY. And that is true. I remember some time ago, there was somebody who did an article about DIY HRT, and it turned out really bad. Like, there was somebody who was interviewed for an article, I should say, and it turned out pretty bad, and from that, people are like, whoa, chill, don't do that shit. And that was like months ago, like many months ago. So there's this. So there's a post from someone. Quote, I've been reliably informed Guardian journalists are snooping around asking for trans people to talk to them about DIY HRT. They are particularly looking for under 18s doing DIY. Shouldn't need to be said, but do not engage. Spread widely, do not engage. We need this notice spread out via every grassroots support group and social circle in the country. Urgent. If they get even one to take part, it becomes a national conversation. Pop alert. So if this is actually the case, then good shit. Because, like, very clearly, this is not a good faith article. Like, I can't imagine, given the dog shit article that we've seen now, without any interviews, that they would have used, like, the interview that they got in any good faith capacity. So it was good that they weren't able to get any interviews. Because it's, from what it looks like, from how this looks right now, they would have done the interviewee dirty. And try to make it out like, the DIY is so dangerous, you know? Like, they're doing without them. So it's good. It's good. It's also like, and it's not as related, but it's also reminding me of this video. And stuff more recently, vis-a-vis the anti-genocide protests, the pro-Palestine protests, and specifically the ones on campus where the students are protesting for their universities to divest from Israel because the right-wing government, Netanyahu's regime in Israel, is currently genociding Gaza and the Palestinian people there. Obviously, any person of good nature, of good, moral fabric should be against that. And having your tuition dollars go to supporting that, wouldn't sit right with me either. So it's good for the students to be doing that. Now, it has been the case that people who are at protests will get interviewed by not only like people making TikToks, but also like mainstream media outlets. And a lot of the time, because you're not a trained spokesperson, you're not like a PR person for that group, you might make the group look bad accidentally. You might like misuse certain phrases or not say things in the way that you meant, or even like in bad cases have bad faith like changes to the things that you said, or like out of context things presented in such a way that it makes the movement look bad. And you do not want that if you're at the protests and in support of the movement. And this has been good policy for protests for a long time. What it seems like a lot of these protesters are doing now is what's going to be in this video. Now, this is not a mainstream media outlet. This is just some dumbass TikToker. But it's a similar vibe because this person, I don't know what this person's vibes are, but there are people out there that will go around, like reactionaries, right-wingers, who will try to go around and interview people in order to make them look bad for social media and discredit the movement and maybe even agitate or instigate shit at these protests. So it's just a good safeguard against that. I don't know if that's what this person is doing, but it's a good safeguard against that if that is the case.
I'm in New York City right now, standing outside of a Palestine protest, and I want to know if they actually understand why they are protesting and see if they can give me any good answers.
So that being the preface, like, I want to see if they actually know why they're protesting. Like, obviously, this person's probably bad faith. They're probably trying to clip people out of context to make the movement look bad at that point. Because, like, this is already, like, a negative framing. This is already an anti-the protest framing. To be like, oh, do they even know what they're protesting about?
What are you guys out here protesting for?
No comment.
Why are you guys out here today?
Speak to the organizers.
Why can't I wanted to ask you though.
Official statements from the organizers only.
That's what you gotta do. That's what you gotta do. Because these people aren't looking for you to actually deliver them information that would make you look good as a protester. They're not there to try to make you look good. They're trying to make you look bad. And even if they're not, like, you might accidentally make the movement look bad by, like, tripping over your words or being taken out of context or whatever. Because not everybody is an effective rhetorician, especially not on the spot. So having somebody who's the PR person, who is a good orator, who's a good rhetorician, who knows what the hell the deal is, be where people go to, not only does it make the protest look more official, it also makes it so that those kinds of slip-ups aren't as easy, and makes it so that people can't weaponize, any kind of mistakes you might have made in your speech or whatever against the broader movement and make it look bad. They're looking to interview 30 people and find the 3 who have no media experience and are tired and slip up. Yeah, exactly. It is often the case that a lot of people like this will have a whole bunch of people that like actually provide good responses, and they just only post the ones who provided bad responses, Because that's what they were looking for. Like even Steven Crowder's done this type shit, where his videos are his Change My Mind videos. He'll have people that will go on and actually put on a good showing, but he'll really only highlight the ones in his edited videos about it of the ones who he thinks he did well against. And even sometimes then, like, he's wrong. And he didn't do good, but whatever.
Simplest terms, why are you guys protesting? Why are you guys protesting today?
I don't think it would be a good idea if we...
Why are you guys protesting?
Just to be a part of the cause.
And what's the cause?
Yeah, I'm not the right person to talk to either.
It's not our job to talk to.
So based.
We're not the
So based.
This is the wrong people to talk to.
And that's a good-ass response, too. We're not the official spokesperson of this event. We're the wrong people to talk to. Like, it's literally not my job to talk to you about this. Like, if you want an official response, go to the official. Like, this happens at events all the time. Like, you'll have people at, like, a fucking sneaker convention where people trade sneakers, and people come and do the interviews of, like, the people that are running pop-up stores or whatever there, booths or whatever, tables, selling shoes, and be like, yeah, I'm not the person to talk to here. The organizer of the event, the convention person, they're the one that you should go to for this. It's just, it's, like, my bad, but it's not my place. Like, even for shit like that, like, mundane like that does happen. Like, there will be press people that people talk to, and you will get directed to them as well.
I'm not asking for the spokesperson. I'm just asking why you guys are protesting.
This is...
Why are you guys here
Yeah, and begins to stutter. Like, this is obviously a bad faith video.
today?
We're not interested in speaking with you.
They said your vibes are fucked. That's good. And it just reminded me of it. Obviously, like, this is not the same, Because there isn't like an official spokesperson for DIY HRT for buying hormones from online pharmacists, you know? So like you can't really use that, but you just don't have to do the interview. You just don't have to answer, you know? And it's good. It's good shit. Both from the protests and from, you know, the people who were reached out for this. Very nice. We love to see it.